Well, welcome to another question and answer episode, live. So, ask away. Michaela is ready to receive your questions, but meanwhile, I'm going to be showing you a very interesting project. It's a fan back chair. We have two of these, and these were stripped all the way down. This is a restoration, and what we're going to be doing is putting webbing on today to show you how to put the webbing on. So, well, welcome to another question and answer episode live. Put that down. So, ask away. Michaela is ready to receive your questions. Okay. So, turning this over. By the way, this was refinished also.
Sorry to interrupt already, Deb, but our cousin, I think, Matthew Flynn, is on. I'm not sure if that's him or not.
So is that Matthew Flynn from England?
I'm not sure. It says Flynn's Gaming, so that might be him.
I think that might be Matt. Does Matt have a question for us?
I don't know if it's him. Hopefully it's him.
Okay, if he has a question, he can ask it. Michaela's here to receive the questions. Related to upholstery, any question would be fine. So what we have, I just want to make a point about this particular chair, was professionally refinished. We stripped it down, I stripped it down, and then it was sent out to a professional refinisher. So I don't do both things here. I don't do refinishing and upholstery for the obvious reason that we don't want to get any dirt on a brand new piece of fabric or staining on a brand new piece of fabric. So I'm going to get moving on this project, which is going to be the webbing, which is a very important part of the project. We have very large coil springs that go on this, so we need to make sure that the webbing on the bottom is secured and tightly secured. So I'm going to get going on that. So we're very happy. We're off to a great start here. We have at least 8 or 9 people signed up for the class, which we think is a great start. We have other people in waiting, I guess, who have gone on the site and haven't really made the commitment, but we're hoping that they do that soon. And the classes are available. The first class is still available, so you can jump in. Go to BroadwayUpholsterySchool.com onto the website and sign up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my jute webbing, which, by the way, this is a seat webbing. For all of you who have been upholstering, you know that the red stripe is for the seat, and there's a black stripe webbing out there that I don't recommend. Usually they say it's for the back pieces, but it's not a tight weave at all. It loosens up. I actually use the seat webbing everywhere, so I highly recommend that you do that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this up to see how many webbings this is going to take. And we're going to go from the back to the front, okay? We're going to measure, let's see. So if you notice that it tapers back, and we have a lot more of an area in the front, and I don't think 3 is going to be sufficient enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off a leg here to see. I'm going to try to get 4 webbings on here. I say try because on the back, if you look, it's it's going to be very tight for this. I'm going to just try to space it out like so. Yeah, I think we're going to be good. So when you have an even amount of webbing, you always go off a leg. If you have an odd amount of webbing, you always go in the middle and then balance it off from there. Okay, I don't know if you'll see. So I'm not going to do any pin tacking on this. I'm just going to go right to the staple gun. And if you are pin tacking at home, you just copy what I'm doing with pin tacks or with tacks. 6-ounce tack is what I would use for something like this. I actually have a 1/2-inch staple set up on this. We have 3/8 inch staple. You have 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, and 1/2 inch staples. Usually I'm using 3/8 inch staples, although I'm using the big one here because I'm just going to try it out first to see if it goes in properly. I like the biggest staple sometimes on the webbing. So we're going to put our gun in, and we're going to notice. This is very important when you're doing webbing work. I'm going to go off. You have more space in the front, okay? So what you want to do is you always work from the roll, from the floor up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and fold this. Watch the fold up here. This stuff's very unforgiving. It doesn't stretch at all. So you actually have to have it folded like that in order for this to properly fall. So I'm about halfway on that wood rail with I'm not at the end. Everybody wants us to make a point in a minute. Hold on. Just get this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Actually missed, so we got to do this 4. Hammer like that. So we have a total of 9 staples. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stretch to the front. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to try to do this so that the camera sees this. How's the angle on that, Michaela? Is that the angle on that? Are we framed pretty good? Just going to move this over just a little bit to make sure. What I'm going to do is put the webbing stretcher in. Now this is a gooseneck webbing stretcher. Gooseneck webbing stretchers are a nice stretcher because the sharp prongs are contained within the tool. The other alternative is to have this end exposed and the handles this way. It's a little harder to work.
Shows pretty much everything.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm going to be right over here, put this in. If this is a clock, if you see a clock on a wall, and this is 12 o'clock, you want to put your webbing stretcher in at about 2 o'clock, okay? And then when you stretch it, the stretches, let me tell you, the webbing stretcher does most of your work. So most of the work is in the stretcher, so you can even do it with one finger and stretch it tight enough to get this drum tight, okay? So drum tight, get it stretched, and 4 staples. Okay, you're going to release the webbing stretcher. And we're going to cut the webbing. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to staple this back up. Notice the little gap in here, right? This is a tack line for the rest of the upholstery, okay? And for the upholstery and also for the cambric, okay? We're going to pull that tight back, so I want to keep this open. We have a question. Hold on one second. Let me just finish this application here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have a question.
This is from Moody. She's actually from Nairobi, Kenya.
Oh, welcome.
And she says, what's better, an electric or a compressor stapler?
Compressor staple is better, but if you're a beginner, the electric gun is a good starter. The main difference is, let me just show you this. A very good question, very good question. What was her name again, Michaela?
Nope, that's it.
Sorry. So the question is about the difference between a pneumatic staple gun and an electric staple gun. Cost, this is a big factor. This is a very costly gun. This particular gun is a BEA, it's a pneumatic gun. And the thing about this gun is it's a low pressure gun. So that it operates on the lowest cycle of your compressor. So that's important because oftentimes guns don't do that. Guns will shut down or jam when the cycle goes down. I don't know if that explains it well enough, but a gun like this could be $400 or $500, and then the compressor another $600-700, and all the other, connections could be a few $100s. The electric gun, you buy the electric gun and that's it. You get an extension cord. The thing about an electric gun, it's heavier. It's going to malfunction quicker than this gun. But if you're just beginning, the electric gun is a good alternative, sure. Okay. Any other questions for now, Michaela?
That's it so far.
Okay. So let's get going on our webbing again. Welcome from Kenya, though. That's great.
Her name is Moody.
Moody
I didn't hear
from Kenya. Okay, so the second piece we're putting in, it'll be right about here. Do we have any other questions from our producer back there? From Maddie Flynn?
Boy, you have a new question on there.
We have a new question.
What is your opinion on big box furniture stores?
It depends on the big box furniture store. It really does depend. I have to be careful here because if you've noticed, most of the furniture that I'm working on is older. It's more traditional looking furniture, although I do have some modern furniture that is good quality. But the big box stores, you get what you pay for, really. And you know, there are different grades of furniture even in the big box companies. Okay, I'm struggling with this because when somebody comes to me with a low brand box store, they compare the pricing right away. They know that if they're comparing to that there's no way they're going to reupholster it. But if it's in the middle of the line, like if it's a solid wood frame, even if it has zigzag springs, and they watch the amount of the fabric per yard, you can actually save money even in that arena. I don't know if that makes sense. Other furniture like Baker like is more modern furniture. I don't know if you'd call it a box store, but that furniture is definitely worth doing when you're comparing new. So my opinion goes, it depends on the box store, I guess. You know, it does. I can't mention brand names, but it does depend on the box store. So let's just keep moving along here.
We have another question.
Another question.
If the front rail is not flat as that chair, how does one place the webbing? From front to back or back to front?
So we try to follow all of the rules of upholstering, which on the back rail is the stronger rail. So when you're stretching to the front, you want the stronger rail to get the pressure. But when you have a decorative front, and there are some furniture that has decorative fronts, you have to break the rules a little bit. So you do have to reverse the process. So you have to start from the front, work to the back. Now if you're going to do that, I would suggest don't go right to the middle of the rail. You know, try to, upholsterers are the best problem solvers out there. So the way to solve that would be maybe to do your webbing, if it's an even amount, and I say to put the middle one in first. If you have to go from the front to the back with an odd amount of webbing, maybe you should go to the side first rather than the middle of the front, because that will bow. So just be careful. You may not want to put as much stretch on it also, okay, because you're going against the rule. But I know those decorative fronts, it's impossible to go from the back, stretch to the front around a decorative front with the webbing stretch. It's impossible. So you're forced to go from the front to the back. I hope that answers your question. So.
There's another question.
Okay.
This is from your cousin over there.
From Maddie?
Yeah, Flynn.
Maddie from London, England.
Flynn's Gaming.
What's his question?
He says, I find that newer furniture does not last as long with the quality. Do you feel the same or just depends on brands?
Absolutely. Most of the newer furniture, I think, unless you're paying top dollar, is not lasting as long as even the average furniture 100 years ago. I see it all the time. I had a customers come in today, Maddie. They had a couple of cushions with them. Their sofa was 10 years old. And people automatically think the first thing they do is they need to change the foam when they have a problem with seating on a new piece of furniture that isn't so good. So they come to me, they want to pay for new foam, and I tell them today, I told this nice couple that came in that they would be wasting money to do that, because the problem is not in the cushions, it's underneath. So they said sure enough that there's a problem underneath. So it wouldn't have done them any good to spend that money. They're deciding if they want to spend the money to repair the underneath portion, which would require me to pick the sofa up, bring it here. It's about a $500 repair, but they'll decide what they want to do on that. But it really, a 10-year-old sofa shouldn't do that. I mean, the sofas that we're upholstering here, the traditional, really good, well-made furniture, they're lasting 150 to 200 years, really, and that's how well made they are. I'm just coming in, doing some gluing, maybe refinishing, and reupholstering a beautiful frame, you know, with something with this older furniture. So Maddie, good question, good question. So I'm going to continue webbing unless we have another question.
We don't have a question, but Sylvia says she is doing an e-slip chair.
Oh.
as with the class.
Oh, good.
And hers has a decorative rail on the front.
Yeah, yeah. So she needs, is her question webbing related perhaps?
Well, she said she went to the side.
Okay, she can do that. Yeah, she problem solved. That's okay. I mean, you can break the rules a little bit if it means that you're gonna, I mean, look, I mean, if you had to go over that, if you tried to go over that decorative rail with the webbing stretcher and then try to tack down, you probably would have broke that nice decorative piece. So I agree with what you do. Maybe you could send a picture, email me a picture too of what you did. I'd like to take a look at, Sylvia. I'm very interested. And by the way, Sylvia, thank you for being one of our first subscribers ever. And I encourage anybody out there who's just watching, please subscribe. We're nearing 6,000 subscribers, and we want to do, that's going to be a big day here, so please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, I'm just going to put this second one on here. We actually have a studio audience today watching. Jimmy, who's going to be taking our next class. He's actually doing an ottoman. And actually, Jimmy, why don't you come up here to introduce, let me introduce Jimmy, Jimmy from Boston. He's what we call our Boston guy. He wasn't expecting this live interaction, but he's a good sport. We just finished taping a show with him in it. This is Jimmy. Jimmy, how do you like live TV?
Well, this is my first time, so I'm getting used to it.
Sure.
But this is good. I like this. This is what the job that I did when one of my first was to strip it all down and boss hair and webbing and new springs, and it was quite an experience.
You were one of our first students in our classes. We used to teach a lot of classes here at the studio, and Jimmy was one of the first students. And now he's one of the first students to do online classes, and he's doing this beautiful ottoman out of a diamond shaped fabric. It's more of a modern fabric, but with an old motif design, and so we're having fun. Well, thanks for joining us live, Jimmy.
No problem, Kevin.
So,
Anytime to join in the fun.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks. Good job. Okay, so we're going to go to the second one. Do we have any other more questions there, Michaela?
Not yet.
Okay. Just gonna- So what time is it in England, Patrick? How many hours ahead of
Oh,
it?
jeez.
5 hours, I think?
5 hours.
So, oh, it's only 10 o'clock, Maddie. It's not your bedtime yet. So I'm gonna go, I have to be really close up here on this, and then further away up down here. So I'm just kind of spacing. So if you're not sure with the staple gun, again, pin tacking is the way to go. Okay, and actually I'm going to show, actually Michaela is doing pin tacking with webbing, and I just want to show you guys what the alternative to that is with the staple, the alternative to the staple gun. And we're going to see our studio audience in this frame, which is just one person, Jimmy. And what Michaela is doing now, she's actually doing a series of 6-ounce pin tacking. And pin tacking is a tack that's only halfway or 2/3 of the way in. And it's a tack, you're not committing to this tacking. So the beauty of that is, if you make a mistake as a beginner, you can take those tacks out and start again. Taking a 80-pound force staple, a half-inch staple out of something is a lot harder than taking a pin tack out. So what I'm doing over here is more of an advanced person, that technique over on my fan back over here. So let's just.
I also need more.
And and Michaela's out of webbing, which I'll get for her. Michaela, could you get me in frame again over here? Sorry. We're going to cut Michaela some more webbing for her job. Okay, so here we go. Jimmy, off camera, do you have any questions on your ottoman? Or do you like the job, the way it's coming out, the taping and all
I
that?
enjoy the job I'm doing. I just actually have done 2 ottomans,
Mm-hmm.
and both have turned out pretty well. The second one being probably actually to be home,
Great.
which is very nice. But I like the idea of showing how you're doing it right now with regard to the basic of stripping the chair down and how to build it back up again.
Uh-huh.
The webbing, the springs, the floss here, if you happen to have that in an old chair, and see how it all kind of comes together as a chair in the back.
Great. Thank you for the feedback.
No problem.
There's another question.
Another question.
Which is better, synthetic or natural webbing?
Oh, I think by far natural webbing, jute webbing, and the reason is that jute webbing is one of the first, by the way, it's the first webbing that there ever was. I mean, one of the first things in upholstery was the jute webbing, although we use a wider version of it. Usually the webbing that you see in old European furniture is about half the width, but the same material. The reason it's good and synthetic isn't is it has a natural sagging quality over many years, whereas synthetic or nylon does not stretch. And actually over time too, not too long either, nylon, I've seen nylon webbing that actually is falling apart. It falls apart after a while. It gets really brittle. The jute webbing is definitely, especially the seat webbing that we're using, definitely in my opinion the best. Good question. Keep those good questions coming. So we're here to try to save you time and money. And one of the ways we're going to do that is using the proper materials. I love questions about materials. By the way, I don't throw away all synthetic materials. I love that rubberized horsehair for certain applications. And sometimes, because of the expense of real horsehair, some natural materials are just too expensive. Good question though, really good question. Okay, so we just ran out of staples. So we're going to load these staples. Just want to show you how to load staples. It's not like a hand stapler where the staples are put in the opposite way. We put the staple up. Now I would recommend for all you people who aren't used to the equipment, I would take the hose off just in case, and I do that for beginners. I would recommend that. You're going to put your staples in like so, right? Sometimes they don't always want to go in, and you'll know right away because your slide won't go over the staple. But I do want to show you the inside of the gun too. Okay, the inside of the gun, there's a hammer that when you press the trigger, the hammer comes down, and that's what forces each individual staple through the nose of the gun. So that's the good thing about that is contained right there is all that pressure that a hammer, like what Michaela is doing, she's hammering, causes a lot more force, sometimes on the antique frame that you don't want. That's why sometimes using a pneumatic staple gun is better on older furniture. So now we have our staples loaded in, our 1/2-inch staples loaded in, and we're going to just do a couple of practice slides to make sure we're not hooked on anything, there's nothing in the way, and then we're going to give it a good push like so with your palm, right? So I definitely advise you taking the hose off when you do that. I really want to stress safety. So we're all set to go. Now watch when I put it in. My trigger finger is nowhere near here. Okay, you want to be like so, right? Okay, and I'm going to put this is a little tricky for some people because now there's 90 pounds of pressure. When we get to this point, there's pressure here. So you just can't push this. You can't push this. You have to bring back your sleeve with your thumb, and then you push your nozzle in, and then you release. Okay, now you're hooked up. Okay, so let's get moving. So you guys are asking awesome questions, and we appreciate the questions. So we're going to release the webbing stretcher. We have people from England, we have people from Australia, we have people from all parts of the country who are on, obviously on YouTube, but those are some of the people who we hope will sign up for the online classes. We think, because of my teaching, I've been teaching in the greater Boston area since the 80s, adult ed. And we think that we have a very unique online experience with our apprentices like Jimmy, who's here watching us live, and Michelle, our first two students online. I think that you as beginners learn more from them than you would me just talking, because I forget a lot of what I've learned. They, however, are in the process. So I think that that's a great way to learn. So let's do our third one. Get it set up there. Now, for all you people using, even if you're using a staple gun and you're not so sure of yourself, you can do the pin tacking. I would suggest a pin tack down here and then stretch, fold this over and pin tack up here. And then undo these taps and stretch it. And then, you know, if you're not sure of yourself. Okay. Stretch this. But now I do want to say another thing. I'm off to the side here for your benefit. But when you're working on your own furniture, obviously there's a couple of things you want to do. Get yourself seated when you're doing something like that. Get yourself closer to the work. Make sure you wear goggles, safety goggles. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention. Get closer to your work. You can sit down, safety goggles, and you're good to go. But I'm off to the side right here just to show you. This isn't normally how I upholster. This is what we call extreme upholstery for the benefit of the live audience. So I'm going to stretch this. This is drum tight also. So I got it in there. I got it up at 2 o'clock. I stretch down 3 o'clock usually. But the better way of judging webbing though, because oftentimes webbing stretches don't go in at that exact angle, is drum tight. Just remember drum tight, and then you'll be okay. Stretch. And staple. Release the webbing stretcher. Cut it about 1 inch back. And staple. So we've got 3.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is also from Sylvia. I
Okay.
know you can't mention brands, but in searching for a pneumatic stapler, is long nose better? And is the fine crown staple the type used?
A long nose staple gun should only be used for certain applications. They're great to have. I have one that's broken, and you should be aware that a long nose staple gun breaks more often than a short nose. However, the long nose is a good backup gun for places that are hard to reach. A lot of your Victorian furniture, and I think, Sylvia, you've done a lot, if I recall, you've done a lot of Victorian pieces. I think, if I'm wrong about that, sorry. But the long nose is used to get into places where the short nose and your tacking can't get into. So this is a really good question. Staples. I think I can say what I use. They're Empire, E-M-P-I-R-A. And actually it brings up another really interesting point about supplies. So I started the school, I'm doing the online school like I've done classes forever, since the 80s. I'm not out to make a buck on I'm not charging for supplies or tools or anything like that. I'm interested in the instruction only. I'm not interested in making money on people. So what I would suggest that you do, Sylvia, and I think you're already doing it, we're all good researchers now. The internet's opened up the world of research for all of us. So I think you keep asking your questions about supplies and things like that, and do your own research. If you're a beginner, a novice, you kind of you're not going to develop a relationship with a major supplier yet. This is my opinion. As you move along and you're doing more work, you have to develop a relationship, a good relationship with a reputable supplier. And that requires a little bit more finesse. And I can go into that a little bit more as we move along. It's why the classes are so important. As these subjects come up, we'll be talking a lot about that, about how to do these relationships. I'll give you, for instance, when you call a supplier, you need to make sure that you know what you're ordering. In upholstery, there's so many different terms for the same thing. So I bet some people out there have already stumbled with suppliers when they say, well, they don't know what you want. You can't even express it because you don't know. But a good supplier might work with you, but if you're growing, but they're a numbers game. So they're going to want somebody who's going to be quick calling and quick ordering, and they seem to know what they're talking about. But meanwhile, for all you people who are just in the beginning stages of upholstering, do your own research, get your own supplies, drop ship it to your house or whatever. That's the way I would go in the beginning. Don't sweat it, just go light, don't order bulk, don't get expensive equipment in the very beginning. You can use a hammer and 6-ounce tacks. You could start up your business, upholstery business, in your basement for hand tools I'm telling you, for like $100. When you start getting into advancing, you like what you're doing, you really you could collect your tools and get moving, but then you can get into some real expenses, especially if you're buying bulk and things like that. So I'd start slow. So any more questions for now?
Yeah.
Okay, now I have to admit, I made a mistake while we were filming. So I'm going to show you how to fix a mistake. If you notice the mistake that I made, you see my webbing up here? See my spacing? I actually made a mistake. I spaced it too much. So I have to take this out. Now I'm going to show you the agony of taking staples out. So what I'm going to do is, actually I'm glad this happened so I can show you. I'm going to grab my side cutters. See, I was so sure I wasn't going to make a mistake that I don't even have my side cutters handy, so I'm going to have to go off camera. I'll be right back. So I'm going to first try to use the leverage. The webbing is leverage. I have to remove this piece. I don't like this. I'm going to go over, in order to keep webbing, I'm going to have to go over this, and I don't want to do this. I mean, go over this part. I don't want to cut the webbing either. You try never to cut webbing, because once you cut it, it starts to fray. So I need to bite the bullet here and take this off. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut this right in the middle. And everybody at home might be laughing. Look at it. He's been upholstering for 42 years and he made a mistake. Isn't it possible, Jimmy, that I make a mistake?
It's your first mistake, Kevin. Isn't that right?
Yeah, the very first one, sure. Alright, so I'm going to try to do it. I'm glad it's not around finished wood, at least. I'm going to try to use the webbing as kind of like a little leverage underneath here. I'm taking my side cutters. I'm not trying to cut the staple. I'm trying to roll the staple out. Actually, this is working out pretty good. I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be able to get this out as easy as I did. So I'm going to go back now. A couple of the staples broke. I'm just going to go back and twist them out. Because I got most of them. I'm lucky. So with the rest of the little there's little nubs in there. I'm just going to hammer back. And I'm taking my thumb to smooth. Actually, I'm glad this happened to show you how to effectively take it out. And I'm just tacking that in. So I'm going to have to go in front of the camera for 1 minute. Is Maddie Flynn still with us? Patrick?
I'm not sure. Maybe he went to bed.
Do you think Maddie went to bed? Great nephew. We have relatives all over the world, I think, Patrick.
Yeah.
rest of these out as much as we can. We're gonna hammer those back. Take our thumb to make sure that there's nothing left, and that's good. Now, let's pay attention with this one. We don't want to make the mistake again. How are we doing for questions, Michaela?
Oh,
That's
Matt's
it.
still there.
Maddie's still there. Thank you, Maddie, for tuning in. Cheers. This is only water. I don't advise drinking alcohol while upholstering at all. Although we have a member of our audience, or the only one, who I think dabbles a little bit in, maybe not. You'd like a cold beer once in a while, Jimmy?
I'm a wine person, Kevin.
A wine person. Oh, he's sophisticated.
Yes, yes. Strawberry Hill, the vintage brand.
Strawberry. I like Boone's Farm when I
Oh,
was.
there you go. Now you're really taking into it.
Be careful, that's copyrighted.
Oh. Our producer tells us that we can't be saying brand names. Sylvia, you were right.
No sponsors here.
All right, so here we go.
Although if anybody wants to sponsor us, we're available.
Oh yeah, Patrick. I'm sure that sponsors are out there waiting. Has anybody out there live ever heard of extreme ironing? You know, I mentioned these things to Jimmy, and he didn't believe me at first, but I think he looked it up. You can Google it if you want. I think it's out of Australia. Extreme ironing. It's kind of related to upholstery, where this is what they do. They jump out of an airplane with a wrinkled pair of pants and an ironing table, and hopefully a parachute. I'm kidding. I know they have a parachute. And whoever irons the best on the way down is the winner. Have you ever heard of that, Jimmy?
No, they definitely, that is a new game show that I've never heard of.
We don't know if we have anything.
I obviously have missed an awful lot of it.
You've missed a lot in life. You've missed
Yeah.
extreme ironing, Jimmy.
Yeah. Oh, do you have to put the pants on, Kevin, on the way down?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
I just want to be sure, you know, I'm sure for an extra $5,000 you can probably do it.
If anybody out there has heard of extreme ironing, I'd like to, anybody involved in that, I would like to shake your hand. That's me. I wouldn't even jump out of an airplane tandem, you know, when you're strapped to somebody.
Oh, come on, have a little fun in your life.
Have you ever jumped out of an
No,
airplane?
no, but you know what, people, I know an awful lot of people that have.
Wow. You know, John F. Kennedy was once meeting the airborne guys, you know, and he had a line of airborne guys lined up. There were about 10 of them, and he was going down the line saying, you know, what do you like about jumping out of an airplane? Oh, the excitement. And, you know, and the other guy said, oh, it's thrilling. And, you know, he got down to the last guy. He says, what do you like about jumping out of airplanes? He says, I hate it, and I'm scared every time I do it. And then John F. Kennedy said to him, why do you do it? He said, because I like fellas that do jump out of airplanes.
I'm with the crowd.
I like these guys. I'm glad upholstery isn't that dangerous. And we have a couple of people outside who are looking in that want to join our studio audience, but we're not really equipped for any more than one person right now. Maybe someday, right, Jimmy?
We'll get the stadium seats set up, Kevin, next week.
I'm going to hire you to do it. All right, I'm a little happier with this arrangement of the webbing than I was before. So another case for pin tacking. You know, I'm going to show you the progress I think that Michaela has made. Actually, I'm just going to grab the slip seat that she's done and bring it over here. Jimmy's going to help me. My assistant, my able-bodied assistant, is helping me. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yes, no problem, Kevin.
So what she's done now, if she made a mistake like mine with the pin tacking, she could have adjusted it very easily. So I'll just critique this now, see how she did. This is perfect. As a matter of fact, I think what I'm going to do while I have my staple gun out, I'm going to cut this and then I'm going to staple this, because we agreed that sometimes what you can do, if you're just using tacks, you're forced to do it, just drive these in, because it looks good, you're happy with it, drive it in, drive the tacks in. And then fold this over and get those tacks. But we agreed that the frame on this is just too old and too brittle to take that hammering, so we have our gun, we're gonna use it. So what I'm gonna do is, let's just, for now, let's just take this. Do we have another question, Michaela?
No, just some funny things.
Okay. Let's just get this. I'm going to staple to the front of her pin tacking. By the way, we like to sometimes when we have a big class, we like the banter, some of the banter, lighthearted banter. I think that type of thing promotes good learning. That's my experience in the past. Plus, it makes the time go by a little faster. I think upholstery can be very intimidating. I try to, and I'll try to do this with the online classes, make them presentable, make them easily to I do, but we're doing it as we would do an in-studio class. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I have a lot of experience. We've been doing this, like I said, since the 80s. We were one of the first upholstery classes in New England, one of the first adult ed classes that we ran out of a suburb in Boston, a suburb of Boston, and it quickly became the most popular class in that adult ed program, and so much so that it became the anchor class. All these adult ed programs have anchor classes. So I'm really going to encourage people who are advanced, if you're watching and if you're an upholsterer and you have a shop and you want new business, we're going to be presenting how to teach upholstery in your shop. Let me tell you, it really helped my business. It promotes you as more of a master upholsterer. If you're teaching it, you must be good. That's how people think. The technique that we use, I think we'll show you more techniques about that. And I have the proper instructional manuals too to go along with that we'll be sharing as we move forward. Okay, I'm going to bring this back to Michaela. She's going to take out these tabs, and then I'm going to finish up for her with the staple gun. We'll just hand that to Jimmy. All right. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do our cross webbings on this chair. Unless we have a question there, Michaela. Are we all set with the questions?
No, not yet. Or yeah, we're all set with questions.
Okay. Jimmy, do you have a question? How many pieces, I'll ask you, Jimmy, how many pieces have you upholstered as a beginner in the class?
I think I'm up to close to a dozen. I've done a lot of chairs. I appreciate it. I would like to try to do even like a love seat or a small sofa someday. I know that would be something completely first time, and then probably a different approach to using the material, how to sew the material, how to measure for all of it, how it all works together, especially with how you want it to look.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, a small sofa, yes, that's my next thing, would be a nice thing to do.
Actually, Jimmy, Michelle, on her next project, she's going to be doing, I believe, a tub chair, a fully upholstered tub chair.
Oh.
More of a modern chair.
Okay.
And you know, let's face it, out in the world, most of the furniture out there is modern. But we've redesigned traditional furniture to look modern, which is very interesting. With just a couple of tweaks, we can do that. Actually, on Jimmy's project, that's what we did. We made a couple of changes to make it look a little bit more modern. And if you sign up for that class, you'll see that. So moving forward, we're gonna have a lot of projects, different projects going, and hopefully what you'll do is build your skill by watching these classes. So all of you out there too who are on right now watching, please subscribe. I'll say it again. That's what gives us encouragement. Please subscribe to YouTube. Station is Broadway Upholstery School. Okay, so now I'm going to line up, I'm just going to measure out with the webbing to see how many cross webbings we're going to need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, let's do 4. Let's see how 4 does it. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do 4. Now, people at home are going, why doesn't he measure this? It's just I've been doing it so long. I'm pretty good about being close, being almost accurate. I don't. If you want to take out and chalk, you can. You're welcome to do that. And we have another question.
You prefer zigzag springs or coil? And would you recommend changing from zigzags to coil for a comfortable seat?
Wow, is that a loaded question? Who is that from, Michaela?
Sylvia.
Sylvia again. Sylvia, thanks for those really good questions because I think you're helping other people in the audience. So definitely prefer coil springs, definitely. Zigzag springs, the problem with zigzag springs is the zigzag spring, they anchor down usually 2 or 3 big nails on one wood rail. They stretch it with a tool and then they tack to the front, okay? And then they put, if you have a sofa, they'll put 20 of these in. So you can imagine the pressure that is put on these rails, especially the front rail. So what usually happens, have you ever seen a piece of furniture where the front rail and the legs are actually twisted out? You've seen that. That's because of the zigzag springs. It's really, I do not prefer zigzag springs. Now, on some mid-century furniture, they have used zigzag springs, but the key is they use a really good frame. The wood frame, can take all that pressure. What that means is on a sofa, they usually have to have wood cross rails in order to support all that weight, all that tension. Now, a coil springs tensions only come from within the one coil. So you don't have a multiple tension being pulled on the wood frame with the coil springs. And we 8-way tie. You've seen some of my YouTube tutorials where we 8-way tie the coil springs. I'm a big, I love 8-way tie coil springs. I think that's the ultimate seating, no matter if you're having an upholstered seat or if you're having a cushion on top of an 8-way tied seat. Either way, it's the best ever was, and there's no improving on it, although they try to come out with different designs all the time. So Sylvia, keep asking those good questions. I love them. Hope that answers your question. Was there a follow-up to that, Michaela? Did she have 2 parts to that question? Did we answer it?
Oh yeah, changing from zigzag to coil.
Oh yeah, be careful doing that. From zigzag to coil. So most oftentimes you're going to find that if something has zigzag springs, the frame itself might not be able to hold the multiple strappings on the coil springs. Just make sure that the frame is worthy. But yeah, you can do that, but make sure the frame is worthy of all the webbing work, right? You don't want to put all that effort into it and then find out that the frame wasn't worth it. Now the other thing that they do that's a problem on zigzag spring frames is they don't give you a big wide stock. It's usually a small stock of wood, of places to staple. So that's another issue. Now you can also build on the inside of a frame. If you're really committed to the coil springs, to changing over to a coil spring, you can actually have your carpenter, or if you're a carpenter, build a wood frame within the frame all the way around and use that to anchor your webbing. Does that make sense? And Michaela needs more webbing, so let's get her some more webbing. We don't like to pre-cut the webbings, but in this case we're going to do it because we're live. Oh. Okay. And you take all those other staples out. Jimmy's gonna hand me the slip seat. Michaela's taking the pin tacks out of. And I'm gonna fold this over and staple this. There you go, Jimmy.
Not a bad job, Kevin.
Not bad. Okay, so now we're going to continue with our webbing. We're going to have an even amount of webbing on side to side, so we'll go off one of these legs and start in the front. It doesn't really matter where you start. Okay, and it doesn't really matter in most cases. You want to weave the webbing. It doesn't necessarily matter which you start on top or on bottom. In this case, I'm going to start on the bottom. I'm going to weave it. We're going to be bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top. Okay, and the other one we're going to alternate, which you'll see in a minute. So I'm just going to a little bit close to the leg, probably about about a half of an inch from the leg. I'm going to staple that. And then I'm going to introduce my webbing stretcher over here. Stretch that. Drum tight. Release my webbing stretcher. And cut that. Finish stapling that up. So we got our first webbing going side to side. And we're going to always try to work from the roll. Never pre-cut your webbing. The reason you don't want to pre-cut your webbing, which I think I mentioned, but I'll say it again, is that every time you pre-cut, you're pre-cutting about 2 inches, 2 inches more. And so you have a 2-inch waste of every row. So by the time you're done a sofa, you've got all these pieces on the floor that you've wasted. And webbing is somewhat expensive. So Sylvia is doing this is interesting, she's doing an East Lake chair along with Michelle. So that's great. Is there anything about your East Lake that you're not sure about, Sylvia? Or what stage are you? I'll ask you live, what stage are you on that? Let me know what stage you are at on that chair. So now we're going to go, we're going to start under, over, under, over. Okay. And I'm going to just space it about a half of an inch away. I'm going to take stretcher, stretch in, drum tight, staple. And cut. And go over, under for the third one. A little fancy twist. I wouldn't recommend that to you beginners out there. We're out of staples again. So I'm going to undo my staple gun. I'm going to open up my slide. And I'm going to get another row of staples in. Okay. How are we doing for time, Mr. Producer Man?
Doing good.
How much time do we have left for people to ask their last questions if they have them?
8 minutes left.
Good, 8 minutes, so if you guys have questions, More comments?
Sylvia, she answered your question.
Okay.
She says webbing, but I do have a question. Michelle's chair does not have a bracket from the back to the seat on the side. Mine does. When I cut fabric for that, I don't understand how to cut that.
A bracket. So is she cutting, is she at the cutting? If you're at the cutting stage, I think I understand what you're saying. A picture would be great if you wanted to
Dad, I
say.
have it right here. I'm going to show it to you live.
Patrick's got a picture of that. Where is it, Patrick? Oh, you've got the, you mean that you're referring to the brackets in the back. Oh, she's doing a good job here. So show me the brackets again. Okay. All right. She needs to, she's asking a fabric question. Okay. I think I understand. Okay. So, that's right. Michelle's chair she didn't have to contend with that. So you have to contend with that. So when you're doing your fabric, you're going to be pin tacking after you've stuffed the chair out, you're going to be, and you get to batting, your proper batting on, you're going to be pin tacking the back fabric in an area in the back. Don't go too close to the posts in the back. In the back of the chair, maybe like a 6-inch area pin tacks, maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 pin tacks. Then you're going to draw it to the front. Forget about the brackets. Draw it to the front and pin tack the front edge. Then, if you think it's tight enough, you're going to do the pinch test. You're going to just take your hand and just kind of roll your hand along to the back again to see if it pinches out. If you can pinch the fabric, you need to undo those tacks and get it even tighter before you even attempt to cut the post. This is very important. You don't pre-cut posts. So you need to actually pin tack it tight before you cut anything. And then the post that you cut is the back post first, not the side post. So you cut, and that's just a one cut. That's just actually if you fold your fabric, it's a 45-degree angle cut usually, but be careful with that because it's not going to be an exact 45-degree angle cut. So you have to look at it. You've seen my other cuts that I've done on Michelle's. You should wait. If you haven't seen, you might not have seen the cutting on that. You should wait for that, for her to see how she cuts that back post. And now the only difference, after that back post is cut, Michelle has folded it, pleated it, and pin tacked the pleats down. And then she had an easy job from there because her whole side she doesn't have that rail to contend with like you do, that post, the other post. So what you do is you fold your fabric straight, and then that gets a V cut. And I think she doesn't have that on hers, right? So the way to do that is you cut to the center of that post. Don't cut all the way. Cut short first. I always recommend cut short first. And then you have to veer off to the, if you're standing and looking straight on at that post, to the right and to the left, but not too deep. And so some people call that a wide cut because it looks like a Y. But what I would recommend, Sylvia, really is make sure that you practice on that. Take a piece of muslin cloth and practice. And sometimes we'll be selecting certain questions for our YouTube video. So maybe, Patrick, if we can remember this, if she has a hard time, she gets back to us, we can actually do this in a YouTube video to show you. Okay?
Good.
And there's another question.
Okay.
This one is from Omnipotent Mama. Is there a rule of thumb to determine spring height? She also says, I have a cocktail chair from the 50s that was foam and I stripped it down and I'm rebuilding it back up and I want to do it with 8-way springs.
What a question that is. I'm going to turn this over. I'm glad I have this chair, even though I'm not finished with the webbing, because we're almost done with the live chat here. But I want to show you that this chair, it depends, first of all, if you have a cushion or if it's an upholstered seat. If it's an upholstered seat, the springs are usually bigger, and springs go all the way up to, I believe, a number 9 spring. So, I'm sorry, number 5 spring. So what that is a big spring. And these springs, I don't have them up here. These springs are about this high. But this is an upholstered seat, no cushion. When you have a cushion, the springs are smaller. So the springs probably do a number 1 spring, which is about this big. If this had a loose cushion. So it depends Upholstered seat or loose cushion? Hope that answers your question. And I think, how are we doing on time, Patrick?
Probably time to wrap up.
Okay, so another really interesting question and answer. What's this, how many is this, Patrick?
This is only our second one, so there's much more to come.
This is our second question and answer. Like I said, we're going to do this every week, so we hope you enjoyed it. And special thanks to our studio audience of one, Jimmy. And stay tuned for Jimmy. I mean, some of the episodes coming up are going to be very informative. We have a light approach, him and I, to upholstery, and very approachable approach. So that'll do it for this time, and we hope to see you the next time in the question and answer, which will be next week. Thanks a lot for tuning in. See you next time.
You come in good.